and good afternoon. Welcome everybody to Broadband Therapy. This is an episode presented by FISPA, the Fiber Internet Service Providers of America. I'm Jill McCain. I work with FISPA, and we also have several board members on the call today. Paul Chapman is our president. He's from Pathways Communications. We've also got Matt Carpenter and Jimmy Lewis, and there may be one or two other board members who might pop in later. Rhonda is also on the call. Welcome. We're glad to see everybody, even guests here today. Wanted to let you know that we are a member-based organization. So if you're interested in membership or have any questions, you can find us at fispa.org. And I also wanted to let you know that if anyone is attending WISPA Palooza, we partner with WISPA. We are going to be in attendance. A lot of us on the call will be there in person in Las Vegas next week. And we are co-hosting a social event, a dinner, kind of like an Oktoberfest celebration with our friends at D-Kicks. So if you'd like to see us, I'll drop a link for that in the chat where you can come out and meet us if you're going to be in Las Vegas next week. So let me kick things off for today. We are honored to have Michael Kellim from ISP Advisor joining us today. He is here to go over some high-level items, really just to talk about mergers and acquisitions. He works with a lot of ISPs in the internet space, fiber buyers. I will let him take it away and give his introduction, but also wanted to encourage those of you who are on the call, if you have questions, we do want this to be a collaborative session. So use the chat while Michael is presenting. We often during these episodes, we have folks ask questions, and then everyone who's in attendance can feel free to respond, share resources, share ideas, collaborate. If you have questions specifically for Michael or that aren't answered by one of our other board members or another guest on the call, Michael is going to save time at the end to go through those questions. Or if you feel brave enough and you want to, you can turn on your camera and your microphone and we can have more of an interactive discussion at the end. So use that chat, interact with one another, and actually to kick us off, why doesn't everybody just drop in the chat where you're listening from today? And then I will introduce Michael and let you take it away. So welcome, Michael. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So our internet at our Airbnb just died right 5 minutes before this started, and so I'm gonna do it on my cell phone here. And I think I'm gonna do, if it's okay with you guys, no slides. I have some slides, but I think we could go through this verbally and capture it. And a lot of these things that I want to do is really hit these points. And what this list is really the observations that I've made that are the biggest needle movers when I see mergers and acquisitions taking place. And it's like there's rules to this that most of us don't know. And the buyers, the way they perceive things, the way they value something, the tricks of the trade, if you will, to help them get a discount on the deal, the way to improve your valuation, right? The way to, like, there's just kind of a lot there that if is established in our mind as solid fact, it actually allows us to build this business more intelligently in a way that gives us a much better outcome. And the people who know these rules, I feel like they don't really have much of an incentive to tell you, because oftentimes they're the ones who are buying your business, and if they told you, it'd be a disincentive to them. So I don't come from the M&A space. I started in the internet space in 2014. I was knocking doors selling internet, and then I started a marketing agency, and we had some success. We grew a company from around 7,000 subs to around 19,000 subs, where I was managing the marketing and sales. And then in 2021, we launched our M&A business, and just kind of learned the hard way. We knew there was a market roll-up coming. We didn't see anyone niche in this that was specific, and so I saw the opportunity, dove in, and really just kind of just started, right? And we learned kind of the hard way. But I got to see a lot of transactions. I got to see a lot of reasons why deals fail. I got to see like some definitive rules really that separate a failure from a success, but then also why someone's business is going to be sold for 15 million and why someone is sold for 2 million. Like, it started to become somewhat predictable and formulaic to me. where I was like, wow, like if people knew this, right, and they didn't continue making these decisions based on not the key parameters that are the most important, which in my opinion is total equity value. Um, yeah, so I'm just going to go through some of these rules. These are the things that I've just found to be kind of some of the pillars. And just so you guys don't have to listen to me talk straight for an hour, if you guys have questions while I'm going through it, I don't mind like discussing or, you know, having it be more of a group conversation, because I don't know, that sounds more interesting to me. So please feel welcome to contribute. So anyway, so rule number one here is plan the business around EBITDA optimization. And I just can't, like, that's the game. Like buyers, they're lenders, the private equity firms funding the acquisition, um, the banks, right, that are providing the debt, they're going to be looking at EBITDA as the basis to justify the acquisition. And so if you're building with that in mind, it's going to do a couple things. It's going to give you a predictable range of valuation, so you'll know where you're at. The other thing is when it comes time to sell, that's going to be the thing that's going to be the king standard, the highest standard that you're going to be valued based on. So one of the challenges, though, that I see a lot of is I see people spending a disproportionate amount of money on their builds versus their growth initiatives, and it's like it's a really, to me, it's like a surprising ratio, because it's almost 90+%, 95% on the build, and then 5% on marketing. Well, the problem is you're not getting a very good valuation on homes passed. In fact, most buyers aren't buying things on homes passed; they're buying it on EBITDA. So it's like if someone's building something, and it used to be, you guys, when you remember this in the WISP space and then also in the fiber space, you used to be able to build it and people just come like, oh, thank goodness you finally brought something here that is good internet. But as we know, those days are really ending in most markets. There's probably very few of those markets left. And so nowadays you build fiber, you got to compete. You've got to compete against cable, even the cell phone products, the T-Mobiles that are, 50 meg or 100 meg for $30 to $50. Like there's much tougher competition. And so to not spend that money on the growth initiatives is just so risky. And then there's also some ways to launch these fiber campaigns that we found are just really successful. I want to go a little bit slow. I don't want to bounce around too much here. But I'm going to give you guys a couple scenarios. So like, let's say someone has $1 million that they're going to spend. They spend 950,000 on fiber, pass 950 homes. Let's just say $1,000 per passing for easy math. And let's say this is very common. I see this so often. This is probably an average almost. But this guy is spending about 4,000 a month or 48,000 a year on marketing. And he ends up somewhere between 12 and 17, 18%, sometimes higher. But there's a lot of guys that are getting stuck right around there, and they're getting their cash flow pinched so hard they can't raise more debt. They could raise equity, but a lot of folks are not used to that. And there they are, right? And if you do the math on the value that was actually created, it's about 10% more than the build. So they put $1 million in, they added about 1.1 million in value. Now with time, that's still a good investment, right? Because you're paying off the debt and you're getting the subscriber revenue. So there's some compounding effects that make that a good business investment still. But if you compare that to scenario number two, the guy spends 20% on growth initiatives, and I even put this and modeled this at $400 per customer, which is going to be very high. If you average warm leads and inbound calls with expensive growth initiatives, you'll probably end up closer to 300. But in this scenario, this guy dominated the market. He got about 65% market penetration, which is going to be quite a bit higher than most think possible. But with certain initiatives, especially door to door, mixed with digital and mailers, but just these campaigns that are very hyper targeted, we found that those numbers are very realistic to get if we're well positioned in that market. But in this scenario, the guy adds 500 subscribers and creates an total enterprise value of 3.8 million to the to the business instead of just a little over 1 million. So he gets about 3.5 times more equity created than scenario number one. And yet there's almost no one, like literally, it's like 95% of ISPs right now, they're not spending that money on those growth initiatives. They're spending it on the build, and they're getting less than ideal penetration rates over longer periods of time than necessary. And it's just, it's not ideal, right? It's like you can make that your efforts and your business worth so much more money if if you bake in that cost of growth that's likely going to be included in that. So that's the first thing, is build with EBITDA in mind, and then build to optimize EBITDA. I said this, but don't build with assuming homes pass. Oh, we're going to pass 3,000 homes. I'm sure that we're going to get a valuation of, that's going to be good based on this model that we've seen. There's probably one buyer out of 10 that's going to buy something based on homes passed. 9 are going to buy it based on EBITDA. The market is so much richer for that valuation metric. And so it's like, to be safe and not risk unnecessary large amounts of money, it's like, build that thing to get subscribed. Those subscribers are what adds the value. It's not the fiber itself at a small scale. At larger scales, that can be a different story. And there's also one-off, like I said, 1 out of 10 scenarios that you can get a good value on building in the right place. But that is a tiny segment of the market from what we've seen compared to people who are buying based on EBITDA. Any questions so far? I've covered a few things so far, but anything?
So Michael, so when you're talking about differences, what multiplier comes into play?
Yeah, so I'd say it depends on size. So I'd say what I try to tell people to set expectation is like 10 to 12. And that's especially of 1 million and above of EBITDA. We've sold things for higher. I don't want to set this as an expectation that you guys, I would say, to aim for or to think that's going to be likely. But we've sold things at 18 times before because there was a key strategic market and the buyer really wanted it, and they had more capital than they needed to deploy capital. But I'd say 10 to 12 or 8 to 12 is probably a good range. And sometimes you can get more, especially if you have certain pieces in place. If you have a strong growth rate, strong growth rate's king. If you have that helps a ton.
How does good middle mile that's already on the network come into play is in consideration?
Yeah, I think it's important and valued, but most buyers, it still comes down to EBITDA. Their financial partners are justifying it based on EBITDA. So the network being rich and having good things, they'll see the opportunity and they can model based on the growth that's potential if they were to build out from that. And there's value there, but a lot of times it's not like the ROI you get on building and subscribing that network, especially at the lower levels. I would say if you get up to the bigger middle levels, 5 to 10 million of EBITDA, like it's a different market there. We want to play there someday, but currently we're usually at the $1 to $3 million range of EBITDA is usually where we do most of our business.
Hey, Michael, how does revenue, different types of revenue affect valuation? So outside of just regular residential internet, on business internet, voice, MSP, that kind of thing. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so fiber internet, I would say that 8 to 12 times. Sometimes you can get a little bit more for commercial, but also, I haven't done much fiber that's like a high percentage of commercial. I've mostly done the residential side with some commercial, and usually it was the same multiplier applied to both. When it comes to like MSP, usually those are trading around, I would say 4 to 5 times. So that piece would be segmented of the business. So if you have, 100K of EBITDA there, that's, let's say, worth 4, 5, 600,000 of the total value. Wireless, I'd say right now is trading between 4 and 5, sometimes higher if strong growth trajectory, a lot of Toronto. there's not really an established Toronto market. People are getting to buy Toronto networks for similar to non-Toronto networks, which I think over time will change, especially as people can prove that they're getting growth with those investments. But man, it's like, it's almost an epidemic, guys. It really is. Like, people literally, they'll go, like, I just have a client who just did this the other day. He didn't tell us he dropped 500,000 on Toronto and literally is not growing any more than he was before. And he's under LOI. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? And we tell the buyer, hey, we want to get extra money for this. And the guy's like, well, that's not what I would have done. He's doing a strategy that's not what I would have done. And I have my lender approved, they've approved this transaction at this value. I can't go any higher. This is my buy box. And so the guy literally just threw away 500 grand. And so that's actually one of the later things too I was going to mention, but I'll just talk on it a little bit now. But the difference between growth CapEx and maintenance CapEx, like if you have growth in your company, it unlocks so many opportunities. Like growth covers a multitude of it's not just like, oh, it solves one thing. It contributes to the perception of the value of the business. And I'm going to just tell me if I'm going too wide here, but I'm just going to kind of, go into this a little bit, just off cuff here. But like, if you go subscribe, let's say you build a fiber network, 1,000 homes, you get 15%. A buyer comes in and says, you picked a bad market, most likely. They don't think, oh, you suck at marketing, which is actually usually the case. It's not usually that the market's bad. It's usually that the marketing and the sales initiatives aren't potent enough. But a buyer looks at that and goes, well, that's lame. Like, that's risky. I don't want to pay a premium for that. I may not even want it. That same seller goes and deploys good, stuff, door-to-door sales, marketing that matches it. You almost have like the ground troops being sent in with door-to-door. You have like, the Navy shooting in, stuff with, digital ads and mailers coming in, and you're doing a combined attack that's very diligent. And all of a sudden that same business has a 30% growth trajectory 1 or 2 months later. Well, that same buyer comes in and goes, Jimmy, you're a rock star. How did you pick such a great market? And you're like, what in the world, dude? That is how that works. And to me, that's just like, that's the rule. And yet we're not, as an industry, doing and applying that rule. We're looking at our growth rate, maybe not even looking at it, but we're looking at it and it's like, oh, 3%, oh, 10%, oh, -2%. Oh, that's, it's not ideal, but whatever. But it's like that same company can pull a couple levers. Now they're at 30%, they're at 50%. Now they may have to solve the cash flow constraints that come with those investments, but they're incredible investments. They make the business go from mediocre or less than, sinking ship even, to a rock star who is like, the buyers are like, oh my gosh, there's hardly anything on the market like this. This is incredible.
Yeah. I got a question for you, Michael.
Yeah.
So how, with all the BEAD money and BEAD grants coming out, how do you think that's going to affect valuation, since these buyers think, well, you're not coming up with that cash out of pocket, that's free money, so I shouldn't have to pay you as much for your for your company. How do you think that's going to affect it here in the future?
Yeah, so we've actually seen several financial partners of buyers that we're working with get through their credit committees or through their investment committees valuing grants. We see it at 20% of grant value is it not an uncommon one. We see it at modeling. Usually it's modeling penetration rate that is reasonable based on existing efforts or things that they've accomplished. So if you're at 35% and you're building a similar market and you model at 35%, by the way, side note, you'll want to model first if you can, because you can give favorable assumptions to the model and then you defend it, is more advantageous than to let them build the model, because they're going to build it with all the worst assumptions, because that's going to give them the best price for that. But then they discount that somewhat heavily because they of course have to build it. It takes years, right, to do it in many cases. And right, so there's a discount to that. But we've seen people, they win, $20 million grant, and all of a sudden there's a $5 million valuation added to their company. And they're pretty stoked about it. And they didn't want to build that thing for 5 years anyways. So they're happy to get out of it. They're,
What about
yeah.
What about for ones that have been built, that plans on building it out and then, and then selling it?
That's a great question. And we see that quite frequently. And it really puts the seller in a position that they're torn, because a lot of these guys are burnt out, they're ready to move on, but they're like, son of a gun, if I just finish this build and subscribe it, my company, I get an extra 5 million or 10 million. Dang it, that's a tough nut to stay in the game for, another 3 years for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it depends on the person for sure, but really a lot of times, like I said, you're getting valued on EBITDA. And so unless it's more of an infrastructure buyer, they're looking at that going, great, thanks for building it. I'll give you something, but I can't give you what I'm giving you for EBITDA, because that's how my financial partner is valuing this business. That's the rule of the game I have to apply here, right? So there's no question, subscribing the network is a radical different price that you'll get for the company.
So get in, build, get your Navy SEALs out there knocking doors in and getting them signed up.
Exactly. Yeah. And door-to-door teams are tough to build. That's how I started in this business, and there's a lot of easier ways to make money than doing that. I promise you that. Like, my goodness, like you hire 5, 1 makes it, the other 4 quit and or fail in some ways that you feel responsible for.
And they're not cheap. The services are not cheap. Anyone that goes out and does it.
No, and it's so, you get a guy going and he's crushing it. Well, a year later, he's getting 5 offers from other companies, all paying him more money than you're paying him. So how are you going to keep that guy around? Like, it's a tough gig. There's nothing that I know that's more effective, especially paired with other marketing, to warm up the market for it.
Yeah.
But it is a tough gig. We actually recently started offering it again, super begrudgingly, because I don't even want to do it. But we're doing it especially for companies that we're partnering in. So we're investing in the company, and then we're deploying them for our companies that we're investing in, is mostly what we're aiming to do, instead of as a service. But we probably will do it as a service too, to keep our team busy. But yeah. So note here. So one thing I see a lot of is people go to the bank and they put a business plan together, and they, get $1 million of debt, and they're cool and building fiber, and their goal is, it's the real estate grab, right? And I get it. Like, if you don't build fiber there, someone else probably will, right? But they spend all their money on that infrastructure, and then literally they're like slumming it on the marketing. And I see so many of these companies, they usually peak at like 350K of EBITDA. The owner's out there running the crews almost every time, and they're just stuck. And I'm like, dang, those guys, if they could just raise a little more capital, or have an investor come in, minority partner, put the money in to get them unstuck, do the growth initiative to where it's cash flow positive and can start sustaining itself for growth. That actually is one of our business models that we're looking at doing, is doing that for companies. Because for us, we can take a $3 million company and make it a $20 million company in 2 years. And then if we do that for you and I don't get paid anything, I'm like, hey, dude, I'll work for free. My team will work for free. With 80 employees, we'll put our team that we need to work for you. And then we don't make any money until we get you $20 million wired to you, right? That's kind of a thing that we're looking at, because we're like, that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
Anyway, I told Jill I wasn't pitching things. I don't intend to pitch things. I'm just sharing, Sorry, Jill.
How-tos, that's all we're worried about.
Yeah. So,
but that brings a good point. Sorry, guys. That brings a good point. Like, almost like marketing as a service, kind of, in a way, to provide value-added services to companies that don't have a team, don't have a skill set.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard to outmarket the big guys like AT&T and Cox and stuff. We're having that issue from where they came and overbuilt on top of us, and they got the door-to-door guys going around now. We've lost a few more people from them, which is difficult. It's purely on price, and the door-to-door people, the current customers think the door-to-door people are local people, and they're not. They're like, oh, they're out of this office, right down the road. I'm like, no, that's just the flyer with the guy's name that works there. You know, these guys aren't actually local because, you know, down here, it has a lot to do with, you know, you got to be in the community. And so that's what they're showing. And people are switching and stuff. And I get it. But it is a tough nut to crack when, you know, those guys have a lot more money to spend on marketing, yeah, than us, you know.
Oh, yeah, it's so true. I mean, if they sell a bundle for internet and cell, which is a new trend that is very popular, and cellular door to door has become like they'll give you a better deal door to door than they will if you walk into the AT&T store. So they make it a great incentive to bundle it.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're going to a customer. I mean, they're selling AT&T fiber. And they go, hey, you got AT&T phone service? I can get you another $10 off.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, they've got some synergies in their budget. I mean, a lot of these, like not necessarily the reps, but the companies who are employing the reps are getting like $1,800 per sale that's installed if they do a bundle for fiber and cellular.
That's over 2 years worth of revenue.
Yeah, it's and the five and you know 600-ish if you do volume, and then 1,100 if it's like a family of 4, right? I think is the math that I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean it's compelling, and they're able to recruit great door-to-door reps, which the range of skill in door-to-door is ridiculous. You see a great guy, he's a magician. He knocks on the door, the person says, "Get out of here, I'm not interested," and 10 minutes later they're signing a contract saying, "Oh, I'm so glad I met you. This is a great day." And you're like, how did that guy do that, right? Like those guys versus the person that's just knocking on your door like, "Hey, you want to sign up?" Nope. Okay, next guy. Right? There's a big difference. And our thing has been we only want to hire the rock stars. They're very expensive, honestly, very expensive. A lot of these guys are making $200,000-300 grand a summer already. So for us, we have to match or incentivize them with quality of life, which has been our strategy, is pay a little less, but quality of life be higher. You know, by providing them leads, providing them like getting the CEO of the company and the team to value them so much and see them as such a key part of their strategy that the person feels part of something instead of the cold transactional thing they're used to with the big providers. We found some of those pieces kind of help to give us more leverage. But
just gave me an idea. I'm gonna call that guy my buddy told me about. I'm gonna hire him away.
Jimmy, give him a Benz to drive. Give him a Benz to drive.
Give him a Benz.
So, Jimmy, I tell people all the time, if you'd have told me 10 years ago we were going to be in the door-to-door sales business, I'd have told you were crazy.
I know you're right.
But we are. That's the business you're in. If you're overbuilding fiber, particularly, if you're overbuilding cable, you're in the door-to-door business, or you're not going to have enough penetration of that. So
you're right. And there's nothing I despise more. That's the problem. It just goes against my core.
Yes.
But it's a reality.
It is. You just think how, I mean, and you go out and you're with these people and you talk to the customer or you're around the customer, they go, yeah, I mean, I want to change. I hate my cable company. Yeah. But they won't do it until somebody asks them to do it.
Yeah. Because they will not pick up the phone.
Right. They won't log on. They just do what
about local affinity? Like any kind of affinity programs between various businesses and so on, just to build a better value proposition. How is that working out in rural?
I'm sure I think those can work. There's a lot of challenges to them. You got to have somebody with skill set to build those kind of relationships too. So, you know, we've had some luck with, you know, just tents in the driveways, people coming in, right? You go into a MDU and, you know, bringing in a food truck, that kind of stuff. There's things that you can do along those lines, but yeah, it's a great idea. It's you have to pick what you can get good at, I think. So,
yeah.
So next rule on here, guys, is to learn how add backs work to EBITDA and really know what things can be added back. That's huge, because you're gonna grab, like if you do straight up EBITDA, your percentage is going to be awful to revenue. If you go and put the ad backs in, you're probably going to be 30-40% of EBITDA to revenue ratio. Now your company's looking pretty juicy, right? And that's going to be the gold standard, is that adjusted EBITDA KPI. That's the one that you'll use when you're raising capital, or if you're selling the business. You want them to be solid. Your adjustments have to be solid. If they're not, you'll warrant scrutiny, where they'll start to go, well, if this is being too aggressive, let me see what else you're trying to pull on me, right? It's pretty much what a buyer will do. We don't see this a lot, but people should do this. This is a no-brainer. Is people should be hiring their own reputable accounting firm to do a quality of earnings, either around the same time or before they're under LOI. Probably even before, because then you can, that'll be a marketing point, that a buyer comes in and goes, oh, I understand it. This is clean, right? They're going to base your value of your business and the professionalism and sophistication of you as a CEO on the quality of your materials. So if your materials are on point, your data is crisp, you can explain it, especially under LOI, that's going to be huge. But then if your financials have been run through, quality of earnings have been done, you might have paid 20, 50,000, somewhere in that for it. But if they save you, let's just say they save you 50,000 because their lender says, hey, I reject that $50,000 add back. And you say, hey, I have a quality of earnings right here from Moss Adams or whoever that says they accepted it. I'm not, that's you're being aggressive with me on this. And that's not fair. Look, I have this right here. And they're going to bring it to the lender, and the lender's going to go, okay, you know what? Whatever. Okay. That right there is just, and that 50,000 it saves you, or 100,000, you get to multiply that by 10. So that 50 grand just made you 500 to $1 million. And it made you look more professional. So the perception went up, and then also, right, the money got defended. Because when you go under LOI, they'll say usually, we accept 1.2 million of EBITDA, but if the quality of earnings comes less, we're paying you this multiple. And guess what? It always comes less. Quality of earnings. A bank is going to look at that, and their loan to value ratio is going to be safer if they can get you to shave off 100 grand or 200 grand of your EBITDA. Because they're going to save, 2 million. They're going to say, hey, we just got 2 million of equity day one just by getting you to shave that off. They're not going to shave it off with their investors. They're going to put it right back in.
Yeah.
So there's a game there, and it's not all disingenuous, but it's definitely a game, because some of this stuff doesn't have a textbook definition that's perfect. It's more so there's some gray area, there's some interpretation. And so if you can get a favorable interpretation, right, that really carries you to have a position of strength once that conversation happens, which it inevitably will.
What's some good examples of ad backs?
So let's say you pay yourself a ton of money. Like, let's say your position, you can suggest that a fiber company your size can hire. And by the way, if you want a great model, look at telephone fiber companies. Those guys are running 10,000 subscribers. The CEO is making 130,000 a year. You're like, hey, look, you can get one of those guys to come run this thing for 130, and I pay myself $1 million a year. And you say I'm adding back the difference between 130 and $1 million. Okay, so that's one of the most common ad backs. Growth CapEx. So if you said, hey, I just went and put in $1 million of the fiber, that if I didn't put in, this answers a question earlier too that I didn't think of this piece, but I just put that $1 million in, just did it this year, and I haven't had time to subscribe it. Okay, I haven't had time. It's not that I put it in 2 years ago and I have 5% penetration, because that's a different story. Right? I just put it in. I could have taken that as profit. So I'm going to add that back to EBITDA. Now that there's a little stickiness, funniness there. I see it more than with wireless, I'd say, because people put up Toronto and and the guy goes, dude, you got nothing extra. You were doing 30 a month. Now you're doing 37. That's a little bit different, but it's not that material in the scheme of things. I'm not paying you this huge ad back for that. Right. So if you have growth, it justifies ad backs. You put that Toronto up, you put 500 grand in it, and your EBITDA goes up and your growth is there. They're not even going to worry about it, because they're going to go, oh, cool, that's working. And as soon as I buy this, it's going to be working for me. So growth really covers I don't want to say multitude of sins, but like a multitude of problems, a multitude of issues that are going to come up. Growth solves so many of them that to not have growth, I almost feel like I'm slapping people upside the head all day. Like, what is wrong with you? You can't have a $10 million business with a $3,000 a month marketing budget. you dumbass. What is wrong with you? You can't do that. Do you not like money? Like, the fact you're a decamillionaire is a miracle. It shows that you can be a moron. And excuse me, I'm a little passionate on this. So, and really it just comes down to math. If someone can show you the math and you can understand it and you can believe valuation and you can understand the cash flow and make sure that you can survive and thrive, but especially survive. When you're in build mode, it's better to aim toward exit than to, if you're planning on exiting at some point in the near future, than to just try to make a ton of money now. Because you putting that money back in the business will pay huge, huge ROI. And if you compare how you pay yourself $1 million a year versus you put that 800K back in for 2 more years, you might have just gotten another 20 million, right? If you subscribe it well. So if I show people that math, they're like, oh crap, what am I doing? And also, do you want to be that guy that's freaking barely getting by with these huge debt payments every month? Like, no, subscribe that freaking network. Stop overbuilding too much and not subscribing it. Anyways.
Michael, question for you. So you say growth, right? Is that 1%, 3%, 10%? And then what kind of, your growth obviously is determined on your churn rate. And as areas start to see fiber and T-Mobile and other cell providers really hitting their door-to-door hard, I mean, what kind of churn rate, even with a little bit higher churn rate, you still have maybe 3% growth? What do you think?
It depends on size. So a bigger company, it's going to be different. That no one's really going to expect 30% year-over-year growth, right? If someone has 10,000 subs, right? That's just they're a rock star in like one of one or something, or one of a few who's funded with 100 million in private equity or something. That's the only people that are doing that. So my 7-year-old just told me he won the Ninja Turtle game. So just wanted to let you guys know that happened because so size really matters with that, because if you're, the key thing for sure is that you're outpacing churn. If you're losing 100 and you're gaining 150, right, and your growth trend is 5%, 10%, that's, especially for a bigger company, that's a good trend. With these guys with 1,000 subscribers, can they add 300 a year? Absolutely. Can they add 500 a year? Absolutely. Right? They can figure that out, how to fund that. And so that's 30 to 50% a year. That's going to be really attractive. People are going to look at that and go, hey, I want to buy it now so I can go enjoy all this growth that's happening here. And the math for ROI and, if you're going to sell it in 2, 3, 5 years is beautiful for them if that trend continues. So some of those smaller ones can really get a crazy trend going, capture a ton of value, and then even capture quite a bit of future value. But if someone's net losing subscribers, that is one of the biggest issues we face. It takes so much leverage away. The buyer's just like, hey, we're going to have to rip and replace. We're estimating 2 million in costs there, 5 million in whatever it is. And then they can kind of justify it. And the seller doesn't have any other real offers because other people pass because they didn't want to buy something that looks like a turd, and that churn number is the biggest indicator of value of someone just writing it off up front. If someone has this great growth trend, they're incredibly beautiful, they're super hot at the dance. If churn is outpacing growth substantially, it's like ugly and stinky is the perception. And so fixing that, we've sold several companies that wouldn't sell until we fixed their churn. And then as soon as we fix it, we might have only had 1 month of growth. We took them from -2% to +3%. All of a sudden, we take it back to market, and now there's bidders. Whereas before, those same people said no. So it's so important because think about it. I mean, you're going to model this if you're a buyer. What's my ROI over 5 years? Well, if it's a downward trend of 3% over 5 years, that's 15%. Like, I'm going to lose that much money, and I'm going to have to make my debt and all these other pieces fit this decline, and I'm not going to bet on me fixing it for sure, right? Because I don't know that I can. Maybe they're doing a better job than I am, because some of you local guys who built these companies operate them better than the private equity guys do. Big surprise, I know, right? And they don't even think they're going to run it better either. They're like, that guy probably runs it twice as good as I do, so I'm going to buy it. It's going to be twice as bad, right? And so yeah, but if that growth is there, it's like, nope, this is good. There's safety there, right? No red flags. So, and you don't even need a lot of data. It could be a month. It could be a quarter of growth. And all of a sudden you have a story. Hey, I made this change. It's working really good. Buyer says, cool. glad you figured this out. You did it at the right time because now we're valuing that.
How often was this scenario come in play where owner decided to reinvest in the company, stay there another 2, 3, 4 years, and you have another competing network coming in the area?
So like the owner sells, like let's say a majority of the business stays on for a period of time with a minority position, and then a competitor comes in. Is that the scenario?
No, before selling. Thinking about thinking about getting out, but decided to reinvest and stay a little bit longer.
Oh, and during that time, a competitor comes in and all of a sudden he starts having big churn numbers take place. Yeah, the answer is really try to fix it. And it's a touchy situation. It's almost like the pinch is on, the pressure is on. You're going, oh my gosh, tighten our belts. This is scary. And in that moment, you almost have to invest because it's like you need more hot air in that balloon. And if it keeps compounding in the wrong direction too much, it could just be really dangerous, especially depending on the cap table and all that. So how indebted, what their obligations are to people. So, yeah, I tell people a lot, like you're in trouble right now, but you have to invest even though you're in trouble because you don't want to lose the value that you created. You have a machine that if fixed will be a very profitable machine and you can sell it for a lot of money. But right now it's broken because you didn't 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when I shouldn't say it like this, it sounds prideful, but I'm at WISPA and I'm going, guys, you can't do this thing where you're like, oh, 30 megs is fine, even though my competition's adding 100 because my average user is only using 30 meg at peak time. That did not end up working. It all came down to perception of I get more value if I get more speed. And that price to speed equation is everything almost. Like customer service comes in, but it comes in a lot, like quite a bit lower, not still important. But the guys that refused to get behind on the speed and price curve did fine. The guys who got behind on the speed and price curve, you look at their SIMs, we've worked with a lot of these guys and we're like, it's bad, right? And the buyers that are looking at it are going, okay, I'll buy a fire sale, but here's my price. And the seller doesn't usually like that price.
Mhm.
Sad part, I can tell you story after story. But we had, for example, a guy under contract in 2021 for like 9.2 million. And it was like 8 million in cash. The buyer just sold another company, had a bunch of cash laying around, and he declined, thought he was worth 10. He wanted to get 10 for it. Well, he was churning about 30 a month, net losing 30 a month. And he continued that until 2024. Then we had him under contract for 6 million. He didn't want to do it then either. He thought it was worth more. Kept net churning. He wouldn't change. He wouldn't invest in marketing. We couldn't get him to do it. And then 2025 right now he's looking at about 5.5 million. He did some changes to fix some churn, but it's like he just worked for less than free for the last 4 years, and so it's like that compounding that's so beautiful in the recurring revenue business is compound. When it starts compounding the other direction, it's a really big deal. Each of those subscribers are worth so much because it's straight to EBITDA. You lose them, straight to your EBITDA. Right? You just lost 80 a month, annualize that 960, about 90 to 100% is going to be EBITDA because your fixed costs are going to stay the same. Right? So you times that by 10, it's $9,000. You just lost $9,000 just because, Betty, got her door knocked on by AT&T and she went with it. Like it's a big deal. Okay. So next thing is this, and I might have mentioned this too because I'm all over here, but the size matters. So like if you're under $1 million of EBITDA right now, and keep in mind this is adjusted EBITDA. So if you have your accountant run EBITDA, don't base it off that. You have to get like usually an M&A minded group who can come in and do the add backs properly so you get a real adjusted EBITDA number. But if you're under $1 million, there's an incredibly small buyer pool. Very, very small. Even if there's good growth. There's just the people who have the money to pay 10 times EBITDA, because that's not a traditional bank that usually funds those. There's some exceptions, right? Co-banks and things like that, but most don't and don't do small stuff. But the buyer market is very small. Once you get to about $1 million, it opens up quite a bit, like a lot actually, probably 10 times more buyers at $1 million. And then once you get to 2 million plus, I actually personally think 2 million is like the sweet spot. I think that's where you can just get this high multiple. the mid-level and even low-level private equity firms can afford to buy it, right? Once you get to 5-10 million, now you're just at a whole nother tier. Yeah, I don't even see that you usually get higher multiples there. Like I said, I don't do many deals there or any deals there, candidly, someday. But I just, from what I see in the public markets and when I see with case studies, it just doesn't seem like they get that much of a higher multiple. So I feel like that 2 million mark is just like where I'd be aiming if I was trying to exit. Because, you know, if you get 10 times 2, that's $20 million. You get 4 million, 5 million debt, pay that off, 15, pay taxes. You got 3 left. I'm just kidding. That's not good math. Taxes are egregious, but they're not that bad. Thank you for those courtesy laughs. I appreciate you guys. So we talked about low market penetration. Someone's going to perceive that as a low value market, like you built somewhere that someone didn't want your service. That's usually the perception you get with that. Quality of your financial materials is a big deal. Your company is going to be judged, and you as a CEO, on the level of sophistication of your materials. The quality of your materials equals your sophistication as a CEO. The guys that just have crappy accounting, they don't have their stuff together, they're always getting fire sale offers. The guys who really have their stuff together, the buyers don't want to pull it because they don't want to screw up a deal, and they're not willing to take the risks as much with those. So it's a sharky thing out there too. When you're talking $10 million, dude, people who are playing at that level, they're sharky. They know how to, they know what they're doing. And it's interesting to watch, actually. I feel like it's been a great education. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so here's an example I just want to show you. So we had a client come to us, and they were doing about 100 fiber installs a month, like company wide. But they had this one particular market they had put a lot of money in. They passed 5,000 homes. They're a telephone company, and as you guys know, these telephone companies, they like gold plate their fiber networks a lot of times, and then they also value them incredibly high, and they're great buyers. They don't usually make good sellers from my experience. But anyways, they had built this fiber network past 5,000 homes, and 18 months later, they had 5% penetration.
Ouch.
And their lender was not wanting to give them more money. They had some bottlenecks that they faced because it was just viewed as this failed market. So we implemented what we call our Ascend program. So we sent door-to-door guys out there. We ran the different ads and the different strategies to support them and build this cohesive system. And in 3 months, we had them up to 15% penetration. And now I don't even know what we're at because I haven't checked. This is a couple months ago, but we're probably close to 20%, maybe even above 20% now. So it's like that market was fine. There was nothing wrong with that market. They just weren't doing the things to get the subscribers. Now, granted, we sent rock stars out there. We sent guys who had been, one guy, making 300 grand a summer, very ethical, solid guy, good friend of mine. Sent his brother out there. He'd been doing it for 6 years. So we sent like rock stars out there to do it. But, yeah, the result on that was awesome. Okay, we talked about growth capex and maintenance capex. I want to emphasize that one again, I guess, because it's just so important. But if you're not growing, you're investing in your business, and a buyer might say, "Cool, I don't care." Oh, you put $1 million in? Well, it didn't do anything, right? Especially if it's debt funded and it wasn't money that would have been profit for you. That's not getting added back to nothing, right? And now you're gonna have to pay that debt off from the proceeds. So being really careful in those investments. One of my favorite things, we're launching a playbook. Because we used to try to do this for people, and we find we just can't do it for very many people at once very well. But we call it Smart Launch, and I'll just kind of share the premise with you guys, but we think it's pretty brilliant. But in essence, we send out door-to-door teams. We run ads where we're wanting to build fiber. Okay, we haven't built it yet. We're in the planning phase. And we're collecting data. What do they pay now? How do they like their current provider? Who is the current provider, right? And we're literally coming in, we're going to freaking dominate this market. We're not coming in, we're going to get 5% and 10%, and then year 3 we'll be at 20 or 25. Heck no, we want 70% market share. We're going to freaking dominate this market. So our price, they're offering 300 meg. Okay, cool, we're a gig. They're $70. Okay, cool, we're 70 or we're 65. But we're going to offer more speed too. Because we want every person that we talk to be like, dude, this is a no-brainer. We're going to do all these adjacent campaigns to create real local buzz that people are like, this is so cool. You guys are doing this. Like, this is special, right? And there's some strategies that we're testing that we find really amazing for that are producing really good results. But that's the premise. The door knocking, they're literally not like, hey, want to sign up for service? They're like, hey, we're not even building this for sure unless you want it. Hey, Paul, if I could get you a gig for $65 with a local company, we're rated 4.8 on Google. We take good care of our customers. You don't have to deal with the big companies anymore. And let's say it's a gig in $65 and you're paying 70, you said, like, what do you think? If we would you want me to build this? And they're like, honestly, yes. Okay, cool. Well, let's do this. We're doing a pre-order. If enough of you and your neighbors sign up, it's only $20 to hold your spot. We're going to let you know if we build it within the next 90 days. If we build this, you're going to be among the first to get installed by being part of this pre-order campaign. Right? We did this. We got 40% of the market we were about to build to sign up for a pre-order campaign. So before we even ran Fiverr, we had 40% give us $20 and say they're ready to go. Like, why in the heck am I going to put millions of dollars into a market before I do that? Are you kidding me? I can get someone to sign up first, right? You need to get contracts signed up front. And yeah, so, and the other thing is it's easier to sell something that you can't get for whatever reason, psychologically. It's almost like, oh, you're a salesman. Well, not really, because I don't have anything to sell you. Oh, well, what is it then? Right? Well, yeah, it's a funny psychology, but it's true. So that smart launch thing, we're going to build a playbook. We're including it for our like consulting clients that we're just like, instead of doing it for them, we're just like, hey, follow this playbook. It's way smarter. Don't go invest millions of dollars until you do this. Because then, by the way, if you're an investor and someone's like, hey, I have 40% of the market who signed a contract, they're good with us building fiber to the house. They gave me $20. They are ready to get installed, as soon as we build it. 40% already. Like, do you know how much easier that is to raise money than it is like, hey, I might be successful, or here's some data, that says people should like it. Like it's just, anyways, it just makes life so much easier, and you're doing the work that you need to do to subscribe it anyways. And then if you're like 6 months in, you have 40%, or 3 months in, you have 40%, you're a rock star. People are like, can you just take my money, please? Like, I'm calling you, like, just take my money. You're good. You're going to make me a lot of money if I just give you money because you figured this out. And it's very figure outable. But you have to have that growth engine. You have to have that ability to market a certain way, get great salespeople in person. That all is a prerequisite to this strategy being possible.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah.
I would like to add my 2 cents here, because I'm sure that's why Paul's got me involved in this. But from a contractor's point of view, and I'm a contractor, not a provider.
Mm-hmm.
My suggestion is to you guys, as far as marketing, utilize your contractors. We're there, we're tearing their yards up. We're on in their front yard or backyard, whichever it is. You'd be surprised how many people we talk to, and by a lot of times, by the time we leave their yard, they're ready for service.
Yeah.
Utilize your contractors, get them flyers, let them hand out as they go. You'd be surprised how many subscribers we actually get, you guys. So just a suggestion from a contractor's point of view.
No, it's great. It makes sense, right? Something's happening, your neighbors are getting it, right? Another one that we found really successful. I feel actually a little bad sharing all this because some of this is our strategy that works so good, and we're like, oh, we share everything for free. Then why are people going to hire us to do that? But anyways, we're sharing it anyways. And this one's simple, but like after each install, a yard sign in the yard that's like, hey, we just got the fastest internet in town, right? Something that is hypey. And if you're coming in to dominate the market and then you're making claims like that, and you get 4, out of 5, or, because if you door knock, like I used to knock doors in 30 houses and none of them had our service. And by the time I was done, 17 out of 30 had our service. Well, all 17 of them, except for Betsy. So we had 16, and Betsy was just mad and she didn't do it. But 16 all put a yard sign in that said, I just got the fastest internet in town. Well, if you're one of those 13 that didn't get it, or 23, whatever the math is, you're driving past that every day going, what is this? There's a freaking avalanche of excitement, or, of movement going on here, and I'm not part of it. Well, even if they don't call you, because some will call you and sign up, but that door knocker is being sent back to that neighborhood a week later or 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later to go and pick up those other ones. And that's the way you get that massive penetration. You create a buzz, you get some initially, you leverage those that for, you know, the next batch, you start to get massive momentum, and then you're coming back through that neighborhood. Even people who are like, no, I'm not interested. You come back, you knock their house. I've sold so many of those. I'm like, Paul, look, dude, I know I knocked your house and you said I was ugly and you said to leave, but here's the thing, dude, everyone in here is getting this thing. I think you'd love it. I got a special deal just for you. If I make you a deal you can't say no to, you know, would you give it a shot? Ah, you are persistent, young man, young whippersnapper. All right. And, you know, it's yeah, it's a thing. So, so the next thing is like, and this is obviously like shameless, you know, self, presentation or whatever here, but like to bring in the right guides, there are so many nuances to this. Your guys' brain is so filled with so many other things. There's no way to be good at this too. You're already maxed out with the operations of the business, the technical stuff, the grants, the this and the that. Like you're going to go become an M&A expert as well and a growth expert, and you're going to manage that team yourself, even though you don't know what it looks like to do a great job, because for you, that's not your natural skill set. Like that's a nightmare. You don't want to do that. Like find people that know how to do it, right? Structure your contracts with them where it's performance based. They have to deliver the results to get paid, right? And a lot of people who are good at their stuff will be happy to do that. But the other thing is have plans where this thing is planned out, it's mapped out, it's not a mystery. You trust the valuation metrics, you trust the market information as you're receiving it, and then you can plan knowing that you're very likely to hit the outcome, right? If those KPIs are hit as you're planning. And I just find that clarity takes so much stress away, takes so much nuance away. Where so many people right now, they're just like juggling all these balls and going like, I know I'm a multimillionaire, but like, you know, and I heard this one valuation metric and I heard this, but I don't really know where I'm at. And I don't know if I have skeletons in the closet that'll kill a deal and prevent it from working, you know? So it's like, if you answer all those questions, it takes away so much stress. And then you have a plan that you're executing. That's your goal that you want to hit. I just find that to be like the way to build. Yes, Jill.
Hey, Michael, I couldn't find a good place to interject, but we're almost out of time today. I wanted to thank you so much for sharing those rules, your playbook. I know you've got a lot, even more great advice to share with our members. And since you are a future member of FISPA, as soon as the application comes through, our members will be able to network with you and take advantage of your expertise and hopefully ask you when they have need for your services. I also wanted to invite our board president, Paul Chapman. Paul, if there's anything you wanted to say before folks leave today. Oh, he's on mute again.
You think I'd figure that out eventually. So, yeah. Michael, thank you. Very good presentation. Definitely the type of thing we're all talking about. I like what you said. There's only so many things you can be good at, right? I definitely believe that people need professional assistance when going through a process like this. The other thing I want to bring up is I believe we are set up for signups for FISPA Live in February in Nashville. Expect to have a good group there. Always learn a lot, always have a good time. Anyone who's not been there, who's on the call, definitely make this, consider this a personal invitation to come. So.
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. And thanks everyone for being here. I put a link in the chat. If you're attending WISPA Palooza next week in Las Vegas, we'll be there. So register for our dinner. Dinner's on us at that Oktoberfest event. And like Paul said, we'd love to see you at FISPA Live in Nashville. Check us out at FISPA.org and contact us if you have any questions. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Michael.
Hey, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.